failed to mention that my name is Martha, and I'm a grateful recovering alcoholic.
Hi, Martha.
When we change things up, it does kind of wake you up, doesn't it? So we're doing a few things a little different today, and that's good for us. This is actually the first Sunday of Advent, as has already been mentioned, and that is the beginning of the new year in the church. The first Sunday of the new year. Rather than it being the beginning of the last month of the end of the old year. We have 4 Sundays to prepare for Christmas, and that is not to prepare externally. The world will help us do that. You know, there's lots of shopping going on out there, but this is a time for us to prepare our souls, to quiet down and do a little soul work. Some of you know how important it is to prepare, how important preparation is. I hosted our family gathering this year for Thanksgiving, and that called for quite a bit of preparing. For me, it wasn't the cooking that was daunting, it was the cleaning. My mother kept a perfect house, and I have always felt great shame at my own style of house decor. I would call it early clutter and dust. I hardly ever have friends over or family because I feel too ashamed. Isn't that sad? That I let my own shame get in the way of hospitality? Some of you are so good at creating and maintaining beautiful homes. I hope Brooklyn doesn't mind. I asked him if I could share a little story he was sharing this week. It ties in beautifully with our scripture. Brooklyn is one of those people with a beautiful and meticulous home. It is his own work of art. Well, this week, Brooklyn's landlord said that the owner of the building was going to come by on a certain morning and a certain day to inspect all of the apartments. And so, no problem for Brooklyn. You could knock on his door any time, and he could actually open it and let you in, and everything would be beautiful. Imagine that. Some of you are with me. At any rate, but his landlord isn't quite the same, and needed to do a little preparing for this snap visit. Not only in his apartment, but in some of the hallways where paint cans and things like that had kind of stacked up. But the morning of the inspection happened to be Brooklyn's morning off, so he could sleep in that morning, except that at a very early hour he started hearing the clanging and banging of doors as the landlord was quickly trying to get the space ready. He texted the landlord and said, "By the way, some people are trying to sleep." And the guy got back to him and said, "You should be up right now, getting ready." The thing was, Brooklyn didn't need to, because Brooklyn was ready. There's something about being ready and being in a state of preparation all the time. And that's reflected in his spiritual life as well. Wake up and get ready. Or as my dad used to yell down the hall in the mornings to wake us up, "Wake up and smell the bacon." I was always a little disappointed that most mornings we didn't have bacon. But some of us are surely better at others at waking up, even in the morning. I admit to having to set at least 3 alarms, and on Sunday mornings I set 4. Some weeks I can sleep through all of them. But Paul is talking about a different kind of waking up. He's talking about more than just waking from sleep or from sleep at night. Paul is calling us to be alert, to pay attention to the signs of God's presence and wonder all around us. He is calling for a change in consciousness, from the imprisonment and entrapment we can be living in to life on life's terms, to the real deal, the thing we were created for. How easy it is to walk through life as if half dead, as though covered in thick cotton, so that you don't really see or hear or smell or taste or touch all that has been set before us. We can almost be in a coma, staring at our cell phones and computer screens instead of the living, breathing people who are sitting next to us. People, and to this, Paul says, it's time to wake up. It's getting late. I think many of you here know the kind of awakening I'm talking about, can you think of a time in your life when you really woke up? People who have found hope in the midst of addiction can often name such an experience and can name a moment. People who come to church seeking a spiritual path are more likely to be tuned in to waking up. Think of times in your life when something that should have been obvious became crystal clear. You knew something to be true without a doubt. You knew what God wanted you to do, God's will for you. You knew maybe that you needed help, or that everything would be okay if you surrendered. Have you had those moments? In our current parlance, you may hear people say that they are woke. Often this has to do with finally recognizing a great injustice like racism. I'm finally woke to racism. Are you woke? Can you look at an old situation through a new lens and see it differently? Can you imagine something you have always insisted on could be short-sighted and incomplete, or maybe even false? Those great words, I could be wrong. Sometimes things aren't all they appear. Let me share a story with you. When he was 40, the renowned Bohemian novelist and storyteller and storywriter Franz Kafka, who never married and had no children, was strolling through Stieglitz Park in Brooklyn when he chanced upon a young girl crying her eyes out because she had lost her doll. She and Kafka looked for the doll without any success, and he told her to meet them there the next day and they would look again. The next day, when they still had not found the doll, Kafka gave the little girl, a letter written by the doll that said, "Please do not cry. I have gone on a trip to see the world. I'm going to write you about my adventure." This began a story that continued to the end of Kafka's life. When they would meet, Kafka read aloud these carefully composed letters of adventures and conversations about the beloved doll with the girl who found them enchanting. Finally, Kafka read her a letter of the story that brought the doll back to Berlin, and then he gave her a doll he had purchased. "This does not look at all like my doll," the girl said. Kafka handed her another letter that explained, "My trips, they have changed me." The girl hugged the new doll and took her home with her. A year later, Kafka died. Many years later, the now grown-up girl found a last little letter tucked into an unnoticed crevice in the doll. The tiny letter signed by Kafka said, "Everything you love is very likely to be lost, but in the end, love will return in a different way." Everything you love is very likely to be lost, but in the end, love will return in a different way. There is still time to prepare, to wake up and to see the love all around us, and the one who comes to make it possible. Wake up and smell the bacon. Amen.